G'day, JP here, and today I'll be covering the A to Z of getting started in road cycling. So grab yourself a pen and paper and prepare yourself for Velo enlightenment. Okay, I was thinking of breaking this video down into a 1 or 2 part series. But my main concern there is that I really want to make sure that I cover in one single episode the main things that you need to get started in road cycling. Now, there is a lot of information out there you're probably confronted with around the different equipment and what you need and what you should look out for and bike fit and all sorts of things. Now, I can understand that this might be a little bit overwhelming. So I really just wanted to have one episode where I just try and cover the complete package of everything you need to know and consider to take the plunge and get into road cycling. As always, feel free to comment below if you have any other questions or if there's anything else that you might need some help with. I'll be more than happy to help answer your questions. So let's get on to the first piece of the puzzle. Now, the first thing you're going to need to get into road cycling is a bicycle. I know, it's earth-shattering. So there's quite a few different bike options out there. Now, it's very hard for me to recommend a specific model. Now, I don't know what your budget is, nor do I know what particular options you might have in your local domestic market, which manufacturers are providing the best value for money, or for example, here in Australia, probably Giant provides the best bang for your buck. But in your market, it might be the Felt line or the Trek or Cannondale. But what I will do is I will provide you with the main considerations or the main things to look out for when you're purchasing your first road bike. If the cost of the bike really doesn't present much of a barrier, then by all means just go out and buy whatever you like. But for the rest of us, don't underestimate clothing your family or feeding your family, or in winter putting the heating on. These are all important things, and your idea of getting into road cycling shouldn't impact everybody adversely too much. So stick to your budget. At the end of the day, they're all just bikes. They have 2 wheels and they have pedals, and it's not really going to make that much of a difference. Don't think you need to be on the latest and greatest equipment to enjoy yourself. So in terms of the bike, let's cover off the main pieces of information and the main things you want to be looking for. Okay, firstly, a road bike will come in 3 different types. Firstly, we have the endurance or Gran Fondo type of bike. Now, this type of bike tend to have a more relaxed riding position. What does that mean? Well, it means the bars will be a little bit higher in relation to the saddle. That's called the stack. Also, they'll be slightly longer wheelbase, so they'll be a little bit more comfortable and forgiving on the handling as well. So they won't be quite as responsive. They'll be a bit more relaxed, a bit more comfortable. They're designed for, as the name would suggest, they're designed for long days in the saddle. Some of the models from the major manufacturers here include the Giant Defy, the Cannondale Synapse, the Trek Domani, and Specialized has the Roubaix. So they're the main models you want to look out for in the endurance category. Secondly, you have the aero road bike. These bikes have a much more aggressive geometry, so a much lower front end, more drop to the bars. You'll be leaning over a lot more. Also, they're aimed at slicing through the wind, so they're great for riding along on the flat at high speed. The major manufacturers here, the models that they include in the aero category are the Giant Propel, the Trek Madone, the Specialized Venge, the Cannondale System 6. They're the main offerings from the major manufacturers in the aero category. And thirdly, probably sitting somewhere in between the two, we have the traditional road bike, or you might hear it referred to as a climbing bike. This type of bike is again very aggressive. It's probably more of an all-rounder, I would say. However, it does have a very aggressive geometry. It's normally the weapon of choice for the pros on a stage with a lot of climbing. Now, the bike you can see back there, That's a traditional road bike. That's a Giant TCR. So in this category, Giant includes their TCR. Specialized has the Tarmac. Cannondale, their Super 6. And Trek has the Emonda. So they're basically the three categories of road bikes. For your first bike, which of these is right for you? These days, the lines between these bikes have blurred significantly. With the modern advancements in carbon fiber, you'll find now that, for example, the aero bikes are fairly comfortable and also quite light. You'll find the traditional sort of climbing bike will also include some aerodynamic features. And similarly, the endurance or Gran Fondo bike are also quite light. Now, the best way to establish which one is right for you, take a few for a test ride. The thing you have to remember is, if you haven't ridden a road bike before, it's going to feel very foreign to you. First time I rode a road bike, it felt, like the bars, you're leaning forward a lot. The bars feel very narrow. It feels like you don't have good control over the brakes, as opposed to a flat bar bike. Now, you will get used to it. It does become very natural after a while, but if you haven't ridden a road bike very much, that's the feeling it gave me anyway. When you're starting off, if you're comparing these three different types of bikes, it's all going to be a very new sensation for you. You're not really going to be able to appreciate some of the differences between the subtleties, I guess, between the different frames and the way they handle. And you're probably not going to get a long enough test ride that you're really going to have that much of an appreciation for these differences. So my recommendation would be, in general, just get the bike that you like the most. That could mean it's a particular make or model or color, but the bike that you want, the best bike that you can get is the one that makes you want to get out there and ride, versus the one that's sitting at home in the garage because it doesn't quite get your blood boiling. So that's the first thing. If you've got your heart set on an aero bike, go for it. If you want a traditional, sort of climbing bike, if you think that's the one for you, then I've mentioned a few of the models here. You could just go with one of those. In terms of which type of bike, I would be going with the endurance or Gran Fondo bike, followed by the traditional road bike, and lastly the aero bike. That's my recommendation. So they're the three different types of bikes, and I've given you some ideas on the different makes. Okay, the next important thing, or the next main consideration for your road bike, is the choice of frame material. Now let's just keep it to the two main materials out there, and they are aluminium or carbon. Now, a few years ago, aluminium would have been a great option for getting started into road cycling. However, these days, I think with the advancements in carbon manufacturing and just their dominance in the market, I really think that I would be recommending a carbon frame. Now, aluminium seems to have become a bit more of a niche material. Most of the major manufacturers offer a great carbon frame with a price that is really comparable or is comparable to their aluminium option. So for frame material, I'd be going with carbon. Okay, so moving on now to the all-important group set. So the group set includes all the major components such as the crankset, chain rings, derailleurs, and shifters and brake set. Now there's three main manufacturers, and they are Shimano, SRAM, and Campagnolo. Now I'll recommend that you stick with a Shimano group set. They are the biggest player in the market, and they will give you the most options for choosing your model of bike, and also for later on for purchasing spare parts. If we just stick to Shimano group sets, there are quite a few different options out there. The three main ones you'll find are the 105, and up from that we have the Ultegra, and then the top of the range is their Dura Ace group set. Now, 105 is more than enough. The current 105 R7000 group set is really, really good. And in fact, so is the current Shimano Tiagra group set. But look for a 105 group set. 105 is plenty. Another thing to look out for is some sneaky manufacturers try to mix the group set. If it's 105, make sure you've got the full 105 group set on the bike. So that includes the cranks, the brakes, the derailleurs. Make sure they're all part of the same series. The only exception would be if you're looking at, for example, a Cannondale or Specialized perhaps, they use a different bottom bracket system, so they will very often have their own crankset. Whilst we're talking about group sets, let's talk about gearing. Gearing wise, you really want to make sure that you get a compact crankset. So that means the chain rings, the big one is a 50 and the small one is a 34. So it's called a 50-34 compact crankset. Perhaps you might also see a semi-compact or a pro compact. Those chain rings are 52-36. They're okay too, they're not bad. Fortunately these days, not many bikes come equipped with what they call standard 53-39 chain rings. You just don't need gears that are that big. Even the aero bikes these days, which are aimed at high speed, as we mentioned, high speed sort of riding, a lot of those are coming out with compact cranks as well. So 50-34 is plenty. It's plenty for high speed on the flat, and also really good for climbing as well. So you'll be able to get up over any of the climbs. On the back, on your cassette, it'll be 11 speed, so count them. You want an 1128 at a minimum. Ideally even an 1130. An 1130 will be even better. So the 30 will give you a nice big cog, so you can get up over any climb. So the main thing you want is if you've got this great bike, you don't want to be limited in where you can ride. One of the other considerations will be disc versus rim brake. Personally, I like the rim brake. The reason is if on my road bike, on my good bike, I don't go out if it's raining. If I'm going downhill, I don't use carbon wheels, I use aluminium wheels, so the braking is fine. It's not my commuter bike, I'm not riding it in the wet, so I'm not worried about the superior braking of disc brakes. So for me, it's a rim brake. However, where the market is going, in the sake of safety, you might be best just going with disc. A disc brake is going to give you far superior braking, especially hydraulic. They are a little bit more expensive, they are a little bit heavier, but they're a much safer option for braking in all conditions. Okay, so we've covered off the different types of bikes and we've covered off the gearing. So we've narrowed that down to the Shimano 105 R7000 with ideally a 50-34 chainring with an 1128 or 1130 cassette. Now the next important topic is sizing. This is something that if you start to read too much about, you'll give yourself a big headache. Now, it's not that complicated. The reality is your initial position on the bike will change significantly the more you ride. Now the first bike I bought, the seat height, it's not that bike out there, it was a flat bar bike. Now my seating position changed by 5 or 6 centimeters, 2 inches. Now that's a lot. Now that particular bike there, when I bought it, it felt far too long for me. I wanted to put a shorter stem on it even. Since then, I've increased the stem length by 10 millimeters, and I've also increased the reach to the bars. So your position will change. When you're first starting out, you're not that flexible. In all honesty, you can't really get it that far wrong. Now, if you're a small guy, you'll get a small bike. If you're a big guy, you'll be getting a larger size. If you're in the middle, you'll be somewhere around a medium. It's really not that much more complicated than that. You can adjust also the bike up or down a little bit, so that either through the seat, of course, the seat post, the seat height is adjustable on most bikes. Also up front, you can play with the spaces and the stem length and bars to adjust. So you've got to get it pretty wrong that you can't adjust the bike and adapt the bike as you start to learn about your riding position on the bike as well. Also, different manufacturers have different sizing methodologies. A 54 is not the same across manufacturers. They measure bikes differently, especially now with compact frames or sloping top tubes. So that makes it difficult to compare sizes across manufacturers and models as well. So a really good website you can use is called geometrygeeks.com. They include all the measurements for most bikes that are out there. So if you've tried one bike from a particular manufacturer, you can then use Geometry Geeks to compare that model against other bikes, and then you'll be able to establish your sizing across the different manufacturers. The main measurements you want to look at are the reach, and then the next one is the stack. So if a bike has a bigger stack measurement, it means that the bars will be higher up, so there'll be less drop to the bars. So they're the main measurements. The reach is really important, and the other is the stack. So again, even within the particular class of bikes, even within an aero bike, different manufacturers might be slightly different. So again, the bikes are all adjustable through the length of the stem, the spaces that you can use to raise the bars as well. But there's obviously only so much adjustability within a bike. So you want to be within the right size. Now, another thing they say is, if in doubt, go for the smaller size. It's easier to make a smaller bike work for you than a larger bike. If you put too short a stem on a road bike, it can adversely affect the way the bike handles. They say ideally a 100mm stem is about as short as you want to go. You could maybe get away with a 90mm stem, but you don't want to go shorter than that. So Geometry Geeks is a great way for comparing sizes across different manufacturers' bikes. The bike shop will know what's best for you, but obviously at the end of the day, they're out to make some money. So if you're a big guy and they're suggesting a small, you want to be a bit considerate, be a bit careful of what, just use your own common sense, I guess, is the best way to look at it for sizing. So that covers off the bike side of the equation. The next most important thing you're going to need, okay, you're going to need a helmet, so that's easy. Just get one that you like. For clothes, you want a pair of shorts and a jersey. Now, for the on the shorts department, I would recommend you purchase a set of bib shorts. So the bib shorts, if you're not familiar with those, they're the ones that have the braces, if you like, the straps. They're just much more comfortable. Now, they just keep the pad or the chamois always in the right spot, and they'll go a long way to making sure you're comfortable on the bike. Otherwise, you can just they're called Nicks. They're just the normal sort of bike shorts. Listen, if you're getting into road cycling, you're going to be wearing Lycra, so that's just the way it is. Personally, I think it's a bit of a highlight, but anyway, a lot of people just think I'm weird, so that's that. Now, the next big thing is the shoes or the pedals. Now, if you click up here, you can watch my video dedicated to comparing road versus mountain bike pedals. Now, you might think you could just ride on flat pedals. Now, if you're getting started in road cycling, you might as well just get yourself a nice set of clip-in pedals and shoes. So you can go for either the SPD or SPD SL, or mountain bike or road setup, whichever one works for you. The important thing is you purchase your shoes and pedals at the same time that you purchase your bike. Make sure that as part of the bike purchase, the bike shop will help you, will give you a basic bike fit. As I mentioned, it's all going to change for you, but you need to at least start off with the bike shop giving you the basic bike fit. Anyone who does a bike fit will start off making sure your cleats are set up properly on your shoes, making sure your feet are positioned properly on the pedals. Secondly, they'll adjust your seat to make sure that it's the right height and the right forward and back position as well. That's very, very important. Then they'll adjust your reach to the bars, and that you do with the spacers and the stem. So the bike fit, it doesn't need to be some fancy, complicated bike fit at this stage. Even if it's just a starting place, you want more than the old put your heel on the pedal and adjust the saddle to that position. Make sure you're wearing the proper bike shorts or your bibs, because that will greatly influence the height of the saddle. That's why I would recommend buying your bike from a local dealer. Make sure they look after you. You're going to be a good customer. You're going to be buying a bike. You're going to be buying your shorts. You're going to be purchasing the shoes and the pedals. So make sure that they treat you well and give you a decent bike fit. Okay, some other essential items you will need to get started. You'll need a bidon cage, maybe 2, and a water bottle or bidon. You'll also need some basic spares. So you'll need some spare tubes. you'll need tire levers, you'll need a little, a hand pump. You may want to consider a CO2 canister, a CO2 type of pump as well. Also for at home, to make sure your tires are always pumped up to the right pressure, you'll need to get a proper track pump. So they're the basic pieces of equipment that you'll need to get started. Okay, some other items that are not completely essential for getting started in road cycling. They're more nice to have. You may want to, you could get some of these later on. And that is namely a bike computer, so a dedicated bike computer. When you're starting off, you don't really, it's not strictly necessary. If you like, you can just use your phone. There is the proper mounting for your phone. If you'd like to mount your phone, that's called a quad lock. But there are a lot of other cheaper options on eBay as well. Otherwise, I mean, I use Strava. I hardly didn't even use Strava. I use Strava, but I just pressed record and I put my phone in my pocket and I rode as hard as I could. And then when I got off, I pressed stop and I had to look at what the numbers were. So, then there's a power meter as well, but you don't need any of these things to get started in road cycling at all. In fact, sometimes it doesn't make things more complicated. The main thing is get yourself a good bike and get out on the road and start enjoying cycling. Hopefully that covers off everything you need to know to get started in road cycling. It's not that complicated. There can be a lot of information overload out there. I know that, the different types of bikes and crank lengths and bike fit and Model A versus Model B. Just get the road bike that calls to you. The bike that for some reason is the one that's gonna, when you wake up in the morning, you just want to get out and ride. Don't think you need to have, the latest and greatest gear. If you start to get into the high-end bikes, they are extremely expensive. The enjoyment comes from just the pleasure of riding a bike. The main thing is you get out there and have some fun. It's a great hobby. The more you enjoy it, the more it starts to have a positive aspect on your life in many other ways. You start to become more healthy. You start to become more conscious about your nutrition, about what you eat. It's going to make that next ride more enjoyable. If you're fitter and you can ride further, then it's more enjoyable. And once that becomes important to you, then you start to adopt a more healthy lifestyle. For me, I used to smoke a packet of cigarettes a day. So when I started, and I'd successfully stopped smoking before, but started again. So once I got deep into this thing over here, picking up smoking again wasn't an option, because I really enjoyed riding my bike. I didn't want to do that anymore. Once you get into the world of road cycling, it's great. It'll take you places and you'll go places that you just wouldn't go normally. It's a great hobby, and I really hope that in this video I've helped you put together the last pieces of the puzzle, if you like, to take the plunge, and hopefully I'll see you out there. Now, if there's any other questions, please comment below. I'm more than happy to help. And similarly, if you have some other input or advice to give, please include that down below. We'd all love to learn something today. Now, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to check out some of the other videos on the channel, and I'll see you again soon. See you later.